Feels good. I don't know what else to say. I mean, there's been so many people that have come into this, from people that have helped me along my journey from Ohio, Louisiana, everywhere. And we couldn't have done it with a better group of guys. Not just football players, but great men that I just feel blessed to be a part of this.
I do too, Joe. And I mean, that's first of all, two things. One, that dude is just the baddest dude on the block. And two, that song. That song put such a big smile on my face because before the LSU Alabama championship game in January of 12, I was just bumping that song constantly, just listening to it time and time and time again in anticipation of LSU winning and being the champs. And then obviously the game went the way it did. I don't know that I've heard it since January of 2012. But today is the day. The Tigers are back on top of the college football world, and it was just a storybook ride that was it's one I'll never forget, and that's kind of what I want to talk about in this segment. You don't forget any of them, but I was in New Orleans for the Oklahoma for the 2003-2004 one, and that one, I think that one will always be the sweetest because it was the first one for so many people. Sure, there were people around that remember 58, but not as many, and so for that one was the first one for a lot of people. And of course, the 2007 one for me personally, I'm a sophomore at LSU. It just doesn't get any better than that. I mean, you're living with all your buddies. The entire school goes down to New Orleans. You go to the game, you win, and you're with 150 friends down there in the quarter, celebrating as a college student with no responsibility in the world, and you win. So that's great too. But this one is the gold standard. This is the greatest season in the history of LSU football. And I believe by many people will be looked at as the greatest season in the history of college football. When you look at the final AP poll that was released today, LSU obviously finished number 1, beat number 2, number 4, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 14, and number 25. That's 7 ranked teams in 5 of the top 8, including the preseason top 4. And none of those teams that LSU beat, the elites of college football. I mean, who is the elite of college football right now? It's Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Georgia. Those are the teams that are in the playoff every year. And LSU's gotten into one. Michigan State poked its head in and got to one. Oregon, a while back, got into one. But that's college football. That's the elite. And LSU beat all of them except Ohio State. And none of those teams had the ball with a chance to beat LSU in the fourth quarter. Not a one. It just wasn't doable. LSU was head and shoulders above everyone they played this year. And they made some mistakes in the Auburn game, and that kept it close. But outside of that, it wasn't a fair fight. And let's talk about this offense that has set records that will stand for a long time. I'm not going to tell you anything that's never going to be broken because that's a little ridiculous. But, I mean, Joe Burrow, no one in the SEC's history had ever thrown for 4,500 yards. He threw for 5,600 yards. That's 1,100 more than the previous high. Some of the defenses in college football that are still putting up a fight in this era of basketball on grass, Auburn, Florida, to a degree, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson. Listen to the statistics that LSU rolled up on these teams. Against Auburn, 508 yards. Against Florida, 511 yards and 42 points. Against Alabama, on the road, 559 yards and 46 points. Against Georgia, 481 yards, 37 points. And then last night against Clemson, 628 yards and 42 points. Against Auburn, Florida, Bama, Georgia, and Clemson, LSU averaged 537 yards and 38 points. Beat them all. This team may not have the most first-round picks ever, and there may be some teams that had a greater margin of victory. Nebraska ran Florida off the field in a championship game. But when you put resumes up there, this is the best one ever. It just is. And you don't get an extra trophy for that, and it's subjective anyway, but it can be supported with statistical facts, and I'm going to have no problem saying that I watched the greatest team to ever play college football, and it was this LSU team. It's just truly remarkable. And then Joe Burrow. This dude, whenever someone comes on and says, could that college team beat that NFL team? It's just they couldn't. They can't. The NFL team is all pros. It's men. It's a different game. But I'm very comfortable saying that there are probably 8 starting quarterbacks in the NFL that are not as good at playing quarterback as Joe Burrow, and that could have been put into this LSU offense and wouldn't have been as good as Joe Burrow. Guys like Will Grier. Whoever is playing for the Jets at a given moment. Darnold. Like, he's better than them already, and he's playing college. And you put a pro scheme, a pro passing scheme, the one that's been the most successful in the passing game over the last decade, and you take what Joe Brady got from that, and you got a pro quarterback with a bunch of stud wide receivers, a tight end that emerged, a running back that's a perfect fit, and an offensive line that gelled together throughout a camp's worth of mixing and matching, and he's hurt and he's not, and then you get into the season, you got suspensions here and injuries here. They held it together, and they had some times last night where they were confused, but they did a good enough job. And what Clemson probably didn't know, and I don't say that the Clemson coaching staff or players didn't know. They watched tape, they probably know. But if you were a Clemson fan coming in and you were worried about playing Joe Burrow, you probably are worried about him just throwing the ball for 500 yards. What you don't realize is even when you get pressure, he gets away from it and extends the play and then makes the throw. I mean, how about the first throw down the field in the game? He hits Moss after they had him sacked twice. Now got called back for an eligible downfield, but it was that's when, if you're an Orange, you look at him and go, oh, we got to do this for 4 hours? That's not going to be great. I mean, his ability to sense the pressure, evade it with his eyes downfield, and then, no matter if he's on the run, on the move, the ability to make the accurate throw and make the big play, I've never seen anything like it. Johnny Manziel was awesome. Cam Newton was awesome. And we watched a lot of those guys around these parts. Joe Burrow is the best I've ever seen. And for him to set the touchdown passing record for a single season, to set the record for touchdowns accounted for in a single season, to shatter the SEC passing marks. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit during the season, but when you were in Tiger Stadium in the 90s watching Danny Werfel and Rex Grossman and all those guys throw the ball around for Spurrier at Florida, did you ever think that you'd be watching this? Hell, just the LSU quarterback play over the last decade and the offense and the philosophy. Just amazing to watch what we did there. And I will not take that. I didn't take it for granted for a second. I hope you didn't either. And there's going to be a drop off next year and in the future. What we just watched is not sustainable, and it may not be replicable by anybody. I mean, that sounds a little bit ridiculous to say, but it's just, that's how good it was. Nearly 80% completion. 60 touchdowns to 6 picks. And yeah, they dropped one last night. That'd have been a pick 6, which would have hurt. But we dropped a touchdown too. Jamar had it right in his hands. The whole thing for me, to kind of bring it full circle, just quite simply, the best season I've ever watched and the sweetest national championship. Well, I use that word for the Oklahoma one. That one's is the one that will always be the first one. But that was maybe the most satisfying, to watch them finish it off in New Orleans. And we'll take a time out and come back, and I want to communicate to the people what the Dome was like, what New Orleans was like, if you weren't there, because I've been outspoken as to what I thought about the Dome for Oklahoma and for Ohio State and for Alabama. For Oklahoma, I thought it was a nice crowd advantage for LSU, probably 60-40. I thought for Ohio State it was pretty much 50-50. And I thought Alabama maybe edged LSU in terms of people they had in there, and it certainly wasn't a quote-unquote home game. And Dabo went and ran his mouth and said, we might as well be playing in Baton Rouge. I'll tell you what it looked like in the Superdome. Champs. Tigers win it 42-25 down in the Dome. Hunt Palmer sitting in for Jacob as he weaves through traffic and tries to figure out a way to get here. I-10 was an absolute nightmare, but that's all right. Everybody in this state's in a pretty good mood this morning because the Tigers are back atop the college football world, and they did so winning it in New Orleans. And I want to talk about what New Orleans was like this weekend for those that didn't make it or couldn't make it. On Saturday, ton of orange down in the quarter, in the CBD, around the Dome, restaurants. I mean, Clemson came in on Saturday, really, and there was a ton of orange. And I think that if you came from Clemson, made the trip, you were going to pack all your Clemson gear and you were going to wear your orange. If you're an LSU fan, you're in New Orleans on Saturday, you may not put on your purple and gold because you live in New Orleans, or so it wasn't quite as pronounced a purple and gold presence. Clemson was there though, for sure. But Sunday that kind of flipped, and the whole quarter was painted purple and gold. And the day on Monday was just incredible. The energy around the Dome. I went down to lunch in the Warehouse District, then went to the team hotel to pick some stuff up, the Marriott there on Canal, which was just packed wall to wall. And even in the morning, there's a couple bars out serving Bloody Marys and music playing, and the energy on Monday was just incredible around the Dome. And then you get in, and teams that have really one color, like I realize Clemson does have purple in their color scheme, but no one wears purple Clemson stuff. I mean, it's very rare. LSU's colors are purple and gold, so it kind of is a smattering in its section. Clemson was just orange. So I walk in the Dome, and man, that's a pretty good turnout for Clemson. And I kind of walked I was in the press box and then walked to the other side of the upper deck, and the energy in the crowd, which was full an hour to kick off when I was doing the pregame show. Full. We were in the press box doing pregame. I mean, the Dome was packed an hour to kick off. And there was just such a buzz in there. And LSU kind of took the Dome over. I mean, Clemson had, I would say 35%. They had their little pocket, and it just so happened that, LSU gets pinned inside the 5 twice, and it happens to be right there in the one part of the field where the Clemson crowd really could make a difference, tucked right in their end zone. And they were loud down there for sure, and they made their presence felt when they made a play for sure. But into the second half, when LSU took control, the Dome was it was purple and gold. And I mean, it was unbelievable to watch the shift in momentum and emotion. And then as the Clemson fans filed out at the end, and LSU runs the clock out. The issue was decided with about 3 minutes to go, and Clyde runs the clock out. And by the way, I want another touchdown there. I wanted to get to 50, but as Clemson filed out, I started looking around, and usually, like in Tiger Stadium, when the issue's decided, it kind of empties out. I mean, nobody left. From the confetti falling, setting up the stage, Ogeron's given the speech at the end that he ends with one team, one heartbeat. Nobody had left. The whole side of the stadium was still there. It was like midnight. And it was such a powerful scene to watch LSU win the national championship in that Dome. And it's something that we've seen 3 times now, but just it's unique to LSU because I just don't see Louisiana Tech winning the national championship anytime soon. I don't see the Raging Cajuns hoisting that trophy. Very rare for teams to win the national championship in their home state. Of course, the Florida schools have done it. USC's got the opportunity to do it out theirs. And so the opportunity exists. Georgia got a swing at it a couple years ago. But, man, there's just no way to write this stuff where, a coach that had been a resounding failure and been mocked at his first head coaching stop and turned down a quote-unquote dream job to come to his home school and lead him to the championship down the road from his house. It's just, you can't write that. And so when you're sitting in the Dome and you watch it, you can't help but get emotional about it because of just how perfect it was. And, I love my guy, Jacob Hester, Marlin Favorite, who I do the pregame show with. That 2007 team, unbelievable. But man, they had to battle. And they lost a couple games. And there was adversity and sadness. It ends in triumph, but this thing was a 20-car freight train rolling downhill from August through January. And it didn't even hit a speed bump. And to watch it pull into its rest stop there last night was an unbelievable moment for the state. And it just, for me, as a proud resident of Louisiana my entire life, as an alum of LSU, as somebody that's been there, that is such a prideful thing to watch the entire state celebrate and rejoice like that. And then to leave the Dome after the post game and go to the team hotel. I mean, it was 2:00 in the morning last night, and the lobby was full of people. Music playing, drinks flowing, the players had come in, they were headed out. I'm sure those guys lit it up last night after the cigars being smoked in the locker room. I was talking to Joe Jackson, our sound engineer for the network, and he went down to the locker room to do some post-game stuff, said it was just full of smoke. And I saw a tweet from Dan Wetzel, great national columnist, who said, Joe Burrow is smoking a cigar inside, which is illegal unless your name is Joe Burrow. The guy transcends the law at this point. He owns the state. Owns it. John Bell better be glad he got sworn in yesterday because Joe was going to come take it from him. What a run. And so much will be made from all the records that this offense put up. But to come back and close out hour number one, let's give a hat tip to that Fighting Tiger defense and Dave Aranda because they did a heck of a job